Welcome to the Cyber Rants Podcast, where we're all about sharing the forbidden secrets and slightly embellished truths about corporate cybersecurity programs. We're ranting, we're raving, and we're telling you the stuff that nobody talks about on their fancy website and trade show giveaways, all to protect you from cyber criminals. And now, here's your hosts, Mike Rotondo, Zach Fuller, and Lauro Chavez.
Hello, and welcome to the Cyber Rants Podcast. This is your co-host, Zach Fuller, joined by Mike Rotondo and Lauro Chavez. How are you guys doing? It's been a good, probably 10 hours since I've talked to you.
Same.
Same as before. Well, today we're going to be even better because we're talking about protecting your data and really keeping your data, right? So it's really about loss prevention, right? All kinds, whether it's, PII or PHI, financial information, intellectual property. It's yours. You need to keep it and safe harbor that. So before we dive in, though, as is our traditional method, Mike, you want to kick us off with the news?
Yeah, a couple headlines that I'm going to go into, and then there's a couple of headlines brought to us by Microsoft, which I'll touch on later. Biden orders CISA and NIST to develop cybersecurity performance goals for critical infrastructure. Basically, the president signed a memorandum on Wednesday addressing cybersecurity for critical infrastructure. That would include the energy grid, water, that sort of thing. And basically, the idea is to establish a set of government's stated and defined minimal cybersecurity criteria for these industries in order to stabilize it and centralize it. We'll see if it happens. A record year for cyber attacks that impacted society. Basically, 2021 is already proving to be a record year for cyber attacks. The SolarWinds attack, the Colonial Pipeline attack, the Exchange attack, the JBS Meat attack, and so on. DarkSide, obviously, is a Russian state actor, which is responsible for the Colonial Pipeline and SolarWinds. The Chinese have been implicated in the Exchange attacks and hacks, which led to the unprecedented action of the FBI going into vulnerable servers and removing web shells without the owner's knowledge or approval. It's not so much that the cyber attacks are particularly sophisticated, but that these attacks are having societal consequences that no one anticipated. There's also the rise of geopolitical tensions that is evident through the enablers of these cyber attacks, including the president talking about it turning into potentially a shooting war. That's something to definitely watch.
Weird stuff going on with that.
Yeah. Even after Emmet takedown, Office docs deliver 43% of all malware downloads now. According to Netscope, which released its cloud and threat report, the average company with anywhere between 500 and 2,000 employees now deploys about 805 distinct apps and cloud services, with 90% of those being unmanaged and often freely adopted by business units and users, which is a little scary. The report noted that cloud storage apps account for more than 66% of cloud malware delivery. In Q2 2021, 43% of all malware downloads were malicious. Office stocks compared to just 20% at the beginning of 2020. Collaboration apps and development tools account for the next largest percentage as attackers abuse popular chat apps and code repositories. 35% of all workloads are exposed to the public internet within AWS, Azure, and GCP with public IP addresses that are reachable from anywhere on the internet. And lastly, RDP servers have become a popular infiltration vector, They're exposed in 8.3% of the workloads. So long story short, there's a lot of risk out there. Button up your apps, which is something we're going to talk about in a little bit. Finally, the Microsoft part of the news. New Petit Potem NTLM relay attack lets hackers take over Windows domains. Microsoft does release a guidance for mitigating Petit Potem NTLM relay attacks, and as of this reading, they had not released a patch, but it is just a workaround. Lockbit ransomware now encrypts Windows domains using group policies. Chinese hackers implant plug-X variant on compromised MS Exchange servers. And lastly, Microsoft Teams now automatically blocks phishing attempts. We'll see how long that actually lasts. And to be fair and balanced, Apple patches zero-day flaw that hackers may have exploited. The patch comes mere days after another update that tackled 40 vulnerabilities. So that's the news. Laura?
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Wow, gosh, Microsoft. But hey, I want to retract my statement when you asked me at the beginning, how am I doing today? I'm doing fantastic. Why? Guess who's not in the exploit news this week? Yeah, that Simp Boy Rick from 1981 and his T-Top Camaro WordPress. He's not there this week, but I don't tell you who is. I'll tell you who is. Yeah, I know. I had to look twice. I was like, wait a minute, really? There's no new crazy drugged out plugins that he's dating. So we got PHP 7.3. This is pretty interesting, right? So if you're running PHP 7.3, make sure you should be well beyond 8 at this point, right? But if you've got 7.3 for some reason, look into this because there's a session upload progress that basically abuses the ability for the session to handle that data from its source. And so you can do data injection with this exploit if you can get the session ID. I'll say that, right? So you got to have that missing puzzle piece. But if you can get the session ID, you can inject arbitrary data with this exploit. And to dovetail on to Mike's news, I like to save the lowest of the group for last. Microsoft SharePoint Server 2019. If you're still running that, please make sure you don't expose it. And internally, you're going to have remote code execution capabilities with that version. So make sure that you've got that at least patched to the latest. But if you're running the 0720 version of it, you're going to be surprised. Okay, and that's pretty much it for exploitation this week. Zach, what are we talking about today? Comic books or beach towels? I figured we talk about beach towels. You know, it's an important thing to understand.
This time of
beach
year.
towel.
This time of year, it sure is. Lots big sales going on for those.
Want even more Cyber Rants? Be sure to subscribe to the Cyber Rants podcast. Get your copy of our best-selling book, Cyber Rants, on Amazon today. This podcast is brought to you by Silent Sector, the firm dedicated to building world-class cybersecurity programs for mid-market and emerging companies across the U.S. Silent Sector also provides industry-leading penetration tests and cyber risk assessments. Visit silentsector.com and contact us today.
We need to talk about keeping your data, right? Because that's something that comes up a lot. Now, there are certain organizations that have things that the data that's basically their competitive advantage, right? That is their secret sauce, what they need to protect, their intellectual property, right? Their trade secrets that really keep them ahead. And a lot of times their business is based on protecting that. So that's obvious that, for obvious reasons, they can't let that out there. But there are plenty of other companies out there even that don't have that intellectual property they're worried about, but they do have PII, PHI, they have credit card data, those types of things. So they need to keep it internal, right? They need to keep it where it belongs. And there's lots of ways that data leakage can occur, data theft from not only outside the organization, but of course within it. The malicious insiders or the well-meaning but unknowing employee, right, that just compromises or leaks data. So let's talk about that, and let's start at a strategic or at least like a governance level, and talk about what an organization needs to do to keep their data internal where it's supposed to be. How do they need to be thinking right off the bat?
Mike, my first thought would be a data inventory of the data types that you have and where it all exists everywhere, and then a data classification document to determine to basically label those types and the control requirements around them first. I think a lot of organizations are data hoarding right now.
Yeah, very much so.
So the data inventory I think is important, because if you don't know what types of data that you have that are vital to your business or that are subject to laws and governance and that sort of thing, then it's going to be hard to protect it, right, to keep it from leaking. So I think the data inventory is probably one of the primary steps you want to make, just to try to figure out where are all the places that sensitive data is going to live, right? And so it's a time consuming process, but I think not only meaningful in the end and gives a very satisfactory feeling of being able to categorize and manage all your data very effectively, but I think it's a necessary step for all organizations to go through because of that data hoarding. And I think, Mike, I know we've seen places where, this sensitive data only lives in this, Oracle database. And in fact, it's on SharePoint, it's on people's hard drives, it's in OneDrive, it's getting replicated all over the place. That's when it becomes so difficult to keep that data secure and from accidentally leaking, or if we would called it in the military sometimes a message incident, right? A classified message.
No, yeah, and we've seen that all over the place. And what's worse is that Oracle server or Oracle database that it lives on, maybe a legacy Oracle server that hasn't been patched in 10 years because no one really uses it. It's just data storage, right? So it opens it up to vulnerabilities and to exposure. And yeah, just echoing back what you're saying, the data classification is so critical. And so many people just don't know what they have, where it is, and why they have it, or they've lumped everything together, and they've created queries in their applications where they can pull the classified data or the confidential data, but they have everything together with the same minimal controls and haven't segregated it properly. Like, you with the CDE with PCI, where you have to separate all that out. You should be doing that for all your data, regardless of what kind of compliance requirements that you have.
Yeah, no, certainly. And I don't want to turn this conversation into, technology-based DLP, right? Because I think, I'm not saying that's not helpful, but I think that there are foundational things that you need to do as a business and as a leader first before you start buying a bunch of fancy tools, because they won't help you if you don't understand this like basic stuff. And so, I mean, like at a minimum, well, I guess at a minimum, what we see typically, at a minimum, probably 3 classifications of data, right? You'll have your public, that's consumable from a business perspective, out to everybody marketing stuff, things going to be on your public facing website, that sort of thing. And then you're going to have internal or for official use only, or business confidential, whatever you want to call it. It doesn't matter. You can call it anything you want. What matters is that those are data types that are specific for just internal communication, business, internal only. And then you may have a third type of highly confidential that may include, like what you were talking about, Zach, like trade secrets. Maybe you've got some secret sauce that does all kinds of cool stuff that serves up the focus of your business, right, to your customer base, and you don't want that out. Or you could be holding different types of sensitive data from credit card data to PHI, and you'll need to label that out. And it's not that you need more than one type. You just need to understand that there are a separation of the needs of data, how they should be placed and used, and who should have access to it. And then there are other types of data that need to be kept, as Zach would say, very, very close to the vest, right? And have very strict access controls. But I don't think any of that matters until you inventory.
Yeah, you got to know what you have, right? And that's the foundation of every cybersecurity framework to begin with, not just on the data side, but with your technology assets as well.
Yes, so that kind of brings us back to that one story that I brought up in the news of the Emotet software, the software malware being 43% of Office document downloads from the either the web repository on OneDrive, chat programs, or what have you. So now where are you storing that data, right? Are you storing it in a secure location, or are you allowing people to store it, highly confidential data or confidential data, in OneDrive? And if so, how are you securing that? Do you have the right license, the right Microsoft license for OneDrive to ensure that you have the proper controls so you can control who can connect to that data? You can identify what data is being pulled down, and that you can prevent someone from just taking their personal laptop, jacking into their OneDrive, and stealing all your IP or something of that nature, and then going on to another company.
I don't want to call it data policing because it sounds authoritarian, but I mean, it kind of is, right? I mean, let's just be honest, right? Some of the users, the data users, right, the employees, they're going to be lazy, and they're going to, everybody has their own way of doing things, and they're going to want. I don't want to go to the secure OneDrive, or I don't want to go to Box and download this stuff every time I need to use it or use it online, right? I want to be able to have a local copy, and so this this causes that. That start of data hoarding, right? Where it just gets a domino effect. And now if you've got 50 employees, you've got, 5,000 employees, and you've got all this, all of them doing kind of the same things, emailing over these reports, and it can get out of hand really quickly.
But Mike, you shared an article the other day, and I can't remember the title or the main premise of it, but it was talking about employees and just the sheer volume of software that they install on their own. So employees are out there finding tools and programs online and just using their own stuff, not necessarily company approved, because a lot of companies aren't restricting this. They've said something like for the average 200 employee company has something like over 200 unauthorized applications in the environment. So, or unknown, just because people use their own thing, and that's where your company's data ends up going.
Yeah, I mean, since people have moved to the remote working, and because of COVID, which is why we're seeing so much data stolen, without the oversight of IT and the control of a centralized LAN, you have people that have gone out to find their own solutions. And, case in point, we had a client that they needed to solve a problem of moving large data files. They didn't bother to contact IT to how to do it. Someone found an app online and said, oh, well, this will move large data files. So then they shared it with the entire business unit without any vetting, any security around it, any looking at it, and God only knows what had happened,
We're going to have a whole podcast about administrative control, right? Because I think that's why I bring up Word. I mean, that's the reason WordPress is in the exploit news so much, is because they're creating, they allow the creation, open source, right? They allow the creation of all kinds of plugins.
Right.
Chrome is getting that way too, right? I mean, the Google Chrome store is just rampant with vermin. So
Right.
if you're letting your employees leverage Chrome for browser functions, simple things like that, right? That patching. So I mean, this kind of data protection comes all kind of full circle back to holistic cybersecurity program, really, right? Because every little piece helps provide that protection, another protective layer for the data. But you can't protect a dang thing unless you know where it's at, right?
Yeah, it's for
Talking about those extensions, that goes to the old speed of market thing, right? I've got this new tool. I want to open it up so everybody can, make a part of it and everybody can develop for it. Well, all of a sudden you're developing malware in it as well. As it becomes adopted, it becomes, it's a two-edged sword. You have to cut that off at some point, where you have to sign code and everything has to go through a specific approval process. Whereas, now it's just, everybody puts an app up.
Yeah, it slows business down so far to do that, though, right? We're talking about certification and accreditation now, and business leaders aren't willing to wait. I think that's what it is that you need to have that very mature, very methodical, very empress-like perspective of, we're doing this right. It's going to take a little longer, but when it rolls, it's going to be awesome. Right. And I think that's like the only way to really kind of see those processes through. But I think speed to market is just rampant in the world today.
Well, I remember the good old days when, the first smartphone out there was the BlackBerry, right? And everything got routed through a single location, and any application had to be signed BlackBerry. Those phones were also indestructible, which was always nice. Yeah, I mean, back in that day, there were no breaches of BlackBerries because it just wasn't possible.
I missed a little scroll ball they had on there. It was kind of cool. But yeah, BlackBerry was a great, architecture foundation that's a good example, I think, for a company that did a good job of making that security foundation.
Yeah, but because they didn't open it up, they no longer really exist, right? So it's that two-edged sword, right? BlackBerry was the 800-pound gorilla for the longest time, and then all of a sudden, they're gone because Apple and Google opened everything up so you can develop your own apps and all that kind of stuff that made it easier to use. Thus, we have data leakage.
So I think what you're saying is that's a lot of good information. Start out, inventory, know what you have, right? Understand where it is. I think some other things too are the staff, I think, needs to sign off too, that they understand what's what, right?
Yeah,
I think we have to have that training. Without them basically being bought in and understanding the why behind all this, this stuff will continue, and then really limiting access, being very, very specific on what applications your users are using. It seems like that centralized management is missing in a lot of organizations, and people are just letting them, people are using their own devices with whatever they want. So limiting that is huge. What are your thoughts on data flow diagrams and that sort of thing, having more visibility over where this stuff lives day to day?
Yeah, necessary. I mean, I consider that a step of the data inventory, you know what I mean, to do those kind of data mapping and data flows as a kind of an output of that data inventory to kind of understand what applications are processing it and how users are consuming it. But things like PCI require that. But it's a good exercise to go through, and it gives everybody just a completely different level of awareness on how data flies in the organization.
Anything else on the kind of the high level strategic and governance side? Any other considerations, or should we dive into some of the specific technology based configurations that we can do?
I just think it's key to build the governance piece at the beginning rather than trying to bolt it on the back. And that's what we see is missing in so many people or so many companies.
So once you have that, let's say you have really, really dialed in You understand what data you have, where it lives, it's classified. All these things are in place, and the staff knows what's coming. What about implementing some of the technology solutions? I mean, like, for example, blocking thumb drives unless they're authorized company thumb drives, or some of the MDM solutions and stuff out there. Is there anything that you think moves the needle on this more than others when it comes to just data protection?
There's a lot of cool tech out now. I think the original integrity monitoring and data loss prevention tools were from McAfee and Tripwire and places like that, right? So now everybody's kind of gotten to this game. So if you're out there and you've moved past this kind of governance hurdle, and you kind of understand where your data is, and now you need to apply role-based access control based on need to know, right? And so these tools will help you do that. I think the thing that moves the needle the most is, again, to understand your data entry and exit points that are going to be important. So like you said, Zach, I think a big one that we see a lot is the thumb drive is completely overlooked. No one's using tape storage. You'll see a lot of governance frameworks talking to controls about, removable media in the form of like, old tapes or drives or something. We'd go, down and store in the, in the tape room or whatever, right, for backup. That magnetic media is starting to, be a dying tech now. Even it probably is already dead. I haven't seen a tape silo. I don't know who's been using a tape silo, Mike. It's been at least 10 years for me. So
I know that I got a great deal on 144 floppies the other day from Amazon. So hopefully it sticks around for a while.
I hope so. I hope so, for your sake. So significant. Yeah, that's a good thing to don't stack up on too many of those. I'm just saying. But anyways, yeah. They're talking about thumb drives is really what that applies to now. Most of the laptops that come today, or not going to come with a CD drive. That sort of began like a dying tech as well. So thumb drives are really going to be the point of origin for removable media, and having a method to ensure that that's not an exfiltration point for data hoarding. There's a lot of users that I'm a big proponent of offline storage to USB drive. So there's going to be a lot of your employees that may also have that. Like, I'm going to take it home, I'm going to put it on a thumb drive in case something happens. I don't trust IT. They build a bad operating system load, or we're using Microsoft and I just need to keep it on a thumb drive, right? So, I mean, there's a lot of good reasons to put your data on a thumb drive, but if you're a business and you've got sensitive data and you're in this kind of final stage, make sure that you've got, and again, great point, Zach, make sure you've got a way to issue and manage thumb drives in the organization. Because I think that's a huge risk vector that's overlooked by a lot of organizations that have even enacted very restrictive rights and are using a very modern method of data sharing on Box or something like that, right? Or using Microsoft Intune to manage data at the mobile device now, right? Where you can ensure that users on their phones can get email, but they can't download the attachments, right? That sort of thing, right? So there's a lot of cool stuff that's happening, but thumb drives, I think, are probably one of the bigger risk vectors that I think has been kind of overlooked lately. The phones and the laptops, I think, are probably the easiest to manage with these techs today.
So on the flip side of that, if you're IT department, don't give the users an excuse to do that. Get with your business unit managers, get with your users and tell them, find out what their pain points are, and figure out a way around them saying, well, you guys build garbage, so I need to have a USB drive backup of this. A lot of the complaints are, my laptop isn't backed up. I have a lot of critical data on it. Well, why do you have critical data on your laptop? How can we fix that for you? So from the IT shop side, you need to be able to eliminate those issues, ask those questions, and kind of head off at the pass concerns so you don't force them to use the USB. But I totally agree with you. You got to turn off the USB, or you should anyway, unless there's an absolute justifiable reason for having it. And if so, then issue USBs. But, one of the things that you have to make crystal clear, which is astonishing even in this day and age, if you find a USB drive, don't plug it in. It's just simple concept, but people still do.
Oh, people still do quite. Yeah, that's the drop drive is still a very viable method to get somebody to, especially if you put a label on there. It was just like pics from Vegas.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right. That's all you got to put on it, because I'm like, ooh, pics from Vegas. But I'm gonna get a drop. I'm gonna get a burner laptop. Plug it in. I'm gonna find out. I'm like, oh, this is some great malware. They got me. Good thing it's a burner laptop. Anyways, yeah, you got to test that stuff out the right way. But there's a lot of cool tools out there, right? And so from a tech perspective, what I would suggest to IT teams is look at the subscriptions that you're paying for today. right? I mean, a lot of organizations are Microsoft shop, right? So Microsoft Intune is kind of a new thing for them. That's kind of being proliferated about. It does a good job of mobile device management. Everybody's already integrated into Microsoft's, one login AD piece, right? So it's kind of it works well. I'm not saying it's without flaw, right? Because it's Microsoft. So keep that in mind. But what I will say is that it's not gonna be like putting in a whole new technology to do this, right? It's an enablement inside of a subscription you already have. So I'd say look there first. For thumb drive control, there's going to be a lot of programs. I would look to your endpoint management solution that you're using. So if you're using like a Sophos or a Carbon Black, look to see if they offer a lot of these EPPs are offering the capability to control that whitelisted thumb drive port, right? And then you can also just be like a good engineer, and you can go in and you can disable those ports right at the OS layer. If you just say nobody needs to use a USB drive ever, there's not a reason for it. We have too much technological capability to not need this, then just go in and make the configuration in your gold image, and then you don't have to worry about buying a tech.
Failing that, you can use super glue.
Yeah. Did I tell you about the commercial that I wanted to do for us, where it was just like this like cyber criminal, right? He does all the social engineering, and he gets into the data center, right? And so he's got his thumb drive, and he's in the data center, and he snuck past all the lasers and all the infrared and all the floor sensors, and he's like actually at the server rack, and he's about to plug in his thumb drive, right, to inject this malware into this massive database, right? It's a supercomputer, some giant's got lights that are flickering on it, right? Looks like something out of Star Wars. Anyways, and he goes and he gets to the USB drive, and he looks and he realizes that the thumb drive won't go in. And as he looks closer and the camera focuses, there's like a little wire mesh cage over the thumb drive, and it says silent sector was here. And it's like all bolted in, so there's no way to physically insert it. And he's like, got this look on his face, like watch people die inside.
And then the police come and arrest him, of course, right? Well,
no,
stuff.
I think we end it with him like sitting at the diner, like sipping a cup of coffee in his uniform, just kind of like sad.
Sad. That's a good one. Well, we'll have to make that.
Oh, I was gonna say, one of the things that we also need to look at when it comes to controlling what happens on your devices. You've got Intune, you've got OneDrive's AD, you have native AD, like local on-prem AD, you have hybrid models. You need to really research what Active Directory model will work for you if you're going to deploy GPOs, because in a lot of cases, those Microsoft has not fully baked out that whole solution. Each one has parts that are valuable, so you need to be able to look at Active Directory from that perspective for GPO management and see what will actually satisfy your needs, and make sure you have the right license for O365 and OneDrive.
Oh yeah, and if you're not a Microsoft shop, there's other tools to help you too, right? To do this sort of local host AD management. JumpCloud's one of them. Yeah. That we see, be very successful, right? There's other ones, so do your research, but they will allow you local, security group control with one agent, which is really cool. And you can do the thumb drive lockout, and you can control the host just like you can in AD.
Well, excellent information. Any final thoughts? We're running out of time here. Anything, words of wisdom before we wrap up?
Don't be a data hoarder.
Yeah, definitely. When you get into the petabytes, you got a problem.
There's like gambling addictions, there's drug addictions, and there's data addictions. And your business might be addicted to garbling up and proliferating unnecessarily data.
Well, when you have to maintain a farm of mainframes because you've got data from the 70s, you got a problem. So
let it go, man. Just let it go.
Just let it go. That's right.
Let it go, man.
Thank you.
The 83 vet sitting in the garage, you're never going to work on it, man. Just let it go.
Well, thank you everybody for joining. Hope you learned something today. Hope this information helps you in your careers and your endeavors. And by all means, reach out if you have questions, any requests for topics, anything like that, and make sure you subscribe to the podcast. We will see you next week.
Pick up your copy of the CyberRants book on Amazon today. And if you're looking to take your cybersecurity program to the next level, visit us online at www.silentsector.com. Join us next time for another edition of the CyberRants podcast.